So I lost 20 years listening to these fitness influencers. And what are they all preaching? They're all just saying exercise, exercise, exercise. But no one put actual numbers to paper and really looked at the numbers. Because what you will find, if you actually bother to look, is that running a full marathon burns only about 4,000 calories, while a single cheat day can easily get you 5,000 calories or more. And this means that, like, if you run for, I don't know, 2, 3 miles per day, then like 10 days of running every day will not undo one bad day of eating. And this was like the biggest breakthrough that occurred to me. Like, okay, then exercise cannot be the answer unless you totally prioritize exercising. And then you're just like, both not eating and exercising like crazy, and then yeah, you get some results, which is what happens if you're a fitness influencer. You can dedicate your entire life to fitness. But if you're some kind of business person and you have some kind of business goals and you have family to take care of, you don't have that kind of time, energy, or willpower in the end of the day, because every successful person knows that in order to be successful, they need to go all in. And this means to put all their willpower in that one specific area, and that's it. At the end of the day, there is no more willpower left. So, if there is no more willpower left, that means you cannot dedicate yourself to go to the gym, you cannot exercise, and you certainly cannot fight all the hunger and cravings at the end of the day, because you always lose. And then we know what's the result. I know actually what was the result for in my case. I carried almost 50 pounds with me that I shouldn't have carried, and I tried to get rid of them like for the past 20 years, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So this is the problem with exercise. The second problem is the nutrition and eating. And basically, other advice that influencers are giving, just eat less. But what does that mean? It means you need to be hungry. It means you need to fight yourself to stay hungry, which is even worse than exercise. Because if you're going to use willpower and then you go 1 hour into the gym, that's just 1 hour of willpower. But if you're going to be hungry, that's entire day being hungry. That's 24 hours, unless you're not counting sleep. But basically, entire day you're fighting with yourself. And we already established that in order to achieve anything worthwhile in business, you need this willpower in your business, in dedicating into the goals that really and actually matter. So, what was the only solution in that case? Well, I discovered that the only way I can beat this is to not feel hungry at all, because it's much easier to say no to food when you don't want it in the first place. So, this is what I discovered. I discovered a way to feel finally satiated. Because believe it or not, I reached 36 years old and I've never felt satiated in my life. And basically, I discovered that this is not just me, that's a lot of people, basically, almost all the people who are feeling this way. They never felt satiated in their life. They think they did, but let me give you a quick example that proves that they didn't. So, let's say that you had like a huge meal, maybe 2,000 calories. And what was the first thought that crossed my mind after finishing such a meal? I could go for dessert, right? And you can probably identify with that. And what's the biggest problem here is that apparently I just ingested enough calories, not just for this meal, but maybe for the entire day, and yet the body is craving more and more and more. And this is definitely not hunger, this is pure cravings. So something inside of me is triggering additional food requirement. The body is craving more, even though objectively it doesn't need anymore. I just ingested 2,000 calories. What more could it possibly want? Even if I didn't eat for 3 days, 2,000 calories in a single meal would be more than enough. But no, body says like, let's go for dessert. Let's give me another 500 calories or 1,000. So that's insanity. And then when I looked at the nature, I saw something completely different. So for example, lions, especially male lions, they are not hunting the most. Mostly the hunting is done by the female lions. However, when the hunt is finished, the male lion gets to eat the first, and he eats as much as he wants, and no one eats until he is finished. So in theory, he's moving the least, he's eating the most, so he should be gaining weight. But that doesn't happen in nature. And that's very strange considering they don't have any kind of calorie tracking apps, they don't weigh their food, and they are certainly not better at self control than we are. So, how come they know when to stop eating? And what I discovered is they probably feel satiated the same way I first felt satiated when I was 36 years old. And then I realized, well, this is not the first time in my life that I felt satiated. Basically, there was another example, and this was with water, because basically, water is something I just drink when I'm thirsty. I don't drink when I'm not thirsty, and I don't obsess about the water. I certainly don't plan what kind of water I'm going to have for lunch. None of that. So I realized that I already knew what the feeling of satiation feels when it comes to water, but I never experienced it with food. And when I first experienced it with food, it was such relief because I finally could go through my life without feeling hungry. And I'm actually quite amused by some of my colleagues at work because what basically it happens is I would eat in the morning and then I would skip lunch because I would not be hungry. And then by the evening, they would all talk about how they're hungry, even though they had the lunch and the breakfast. And I would still not feel hungry at all. And most of the times, I would not even eat at night because I just didn't feel hungry. I didn't want food. And this is probably unimaginable for most of you that are listening to this. But yes, it is possible to just feel satiated, to not feel craving all the time. Even after like you had a huge meal, you're immediately not say hungry, but you're craving for dessert for more. So if you want to learn how to achieve this feeling of satiation, book a call with me. It's going to be amazing. I will teach you stuff that you never heard before because I'm telling you, like, what these influencers are propagating, it's definitely not working. And it took me 20 years of trying before realizing, hey, if the advice I'm taking is not working, maybe it's not problem with me, maybe it's the problem with the advice. So if you experience something similar, if you try to follow all this advice that isn't applicable to real life, to real circumstances of a business person and business life, then definitely schedule a call. This is your best chance of getting this result. So, see you on the call.